so the whole procession begins once again. This is the last stage of the state funeral. The last stage of the state funeral making its way now from St. Paul's Cathedral. We look down from right up on the dome. You see the dome of the cathedral itself just below you as you watch. Right down to where the gun carriage is taking the body of Winston Churchill now through the lower streets of the city itself on its way to the Tower of London, Tower Pier and the river. The procession is coming slowly into Cannon Street. The cathedral stands far away in the background, its bells, though muffled, pealing out their sad news across the rooftops of the city. Once again, the troops behind the gun carriage, who, while the service has gone on inside the cathedral, have waited outside, are on the march. The bands are playing. And those who have waited these many hours this morning in this part of the city now see the whole long cortege as it begins to move by on the last stage of the journey. The minute-by-minute salute being fired by the Honourable Artillery Company from the Tower of London. the front of the picture now, as you look down, the three officers who walk with the one officer behind them, of solid, slow pace. The one officer behind, Earl Mountbatten, the Chief of the Defence Staff, and in front of him the three Chiefs of Staff, the heads of our services. On the left, as we look at the bottom of the picture, General Sir Richard Hull, the Chief of the General Staff, head of the Army. In the centre, Admiral Sir David Luce, Chief of the Naval Staff, the First Sea Lord. And on the right, as we watch, Air Chief Marshal Sir Charles Elworthy, a famous member of Bomber Command in the last war, today Chief of the Air Staff. So the three chiefs and their chief march together. General Nelson comes behind them with the officers of the London District, the Household Brigade, and then alone in rear there marches the Earl Marshal, the most senior of all. Procession is now, this part of the procession is in Cannon Street, on its way through Cannon Street towards Eastcheap, passing south of the famous landmarks of the city like the Bank of England and the big road junctions there. It's been passing close to Bracken House, built by Winston Churchill's great wartime friend, the Minister of Information, Brendan Bracken, who, in memory of Churchill, put on the front of the building an astronomical clock which has Winston Churchill's face in the center. And as it moves now along Cannon Street, this was once Candlewick Street, the seat of the wax chandlers of London. The name was corrupted to Cannon Street. Somewhere here in this street too is the London Stone, the point from which the Romans, those thousands of years ago, marked their mileage distances throughout Britain. And as the coffin, the gun carriage, and the mourners' coaches and the walking members of the family make their way from Cannon Street to Eastcheap, so already the head of this long procession, the extreme front of it, led by the police, is already approaching the Tower of London on Tower Hill. The guns much nearer now as they crash out the 1-minute salute and slightly startle the horses. In the foreground, the white helmets of the Guard of Honour of 41 Commando of the Royal Marines, who have this proud duty here by the Tower. The Foot Guards, detachments, bands, with their marshals at their side, bring the middle of the procession through the streets, here crowded, massed with people who waited perhaps 4 hours this morning. The city, often on a Saturday, quite quiet. Today, echoing to the sound of these solemn funeral marches, one after the other, that set the beat for this ceaseless, slow tread of boots as they pass through, echoing between the high buildings. Far away in the background, out of our sight as we watch, except by television, the Blues, the Royal Horse Guards, bring up as the second detachment of the Household Cavalry. Even they having to rein their animals in to a tiny and most awkward pace as they keep pace with the slow marchers on the ground. Then the police band and the Royal Artillery bands that follow in rear, and the big police contingent in the rear of the procession that we see now for the first time. The Royal Artillery Band and the band of the Metropolitan Police march together as one band. The police who follow behind come from all over Great Britain. These are not just the City of London Police or the Metropolitan Police. They come from the county, the city, and the county borough forces scattered about Great Britain. Behind them, there come representatives of the fire services and a corps from civil defence, a whole contingent. With them, there are representatives of the London headquarters of the British Legion, and right in rear, with a banner that you can see even from high up here, the members of the Westerham branch of the British Legion in Kent, from Winston Churchill's hometown. 3/4 of a mile it is from here to the head of the procession that we saw by the Tower. And right in the rear, there come these representatives of civilian life, particularly with the fire services and the police, a memory of those bitter days in the Second World War when Churchill was our champion and these people below were fighting so bravely to try to help to save London and Britain from air raids. So the procession goes on its way down to the Tower. And now, in the crypt of St. Paul's Cathedral, sitting only a few feet from the tombs of Nelson and Wellington, is the senior statesman of the British Commonwealth, a comrade and a close friend of Churchill in years of war and of peace. Here is the Prime Minister of Australia, the Right Honourable Sir Robert Menzies.
As this historic procession goes through the streets of London to the Tower Pier, I have the honour of speaking to you from the crypt of St. Paul's Cathedral. I do this in two capacities. One is that I, Prime Minister of Australia, happen to be, in point of time, the senior Commonwealth Prime Minister, and therefore speak on behalf of a remarkable world organisation which owes more than it can ever express to our departed leader, Sir Winston Churchill. He is one of the famous men whom we thank and praise. My second capacity is more personal and more intimate. I'm sure that you, most of you, have thought about Sir Winston Churchill a great deal, and with warmth in your hearts and in your recollections. Someday, some year, there will be old men and women whose pride it will be to say, I lived in Churchill's time. Some will be able to say, I saw him and I heard him, the unforgettable voice and the immortal words. And some will be able to say, I knew him and talked with him and was his friend. This I can, with a mixture of pride and humility, say for myself. The memory of this moves me deeply now that he's dead, but is gloriously remembered by me as he goes to his burial amid the sorrow and pride and thanks of all of you who stand and feel for yourselves and for so many millions. Many of you will not need to be reminded. Some, the younger among you, the inheritors of his master strokes for freedom, may be glad to be told that your country and mine and all the free countries of the world stood at the very gates of destiny in 1940 and 1941, when the Nazi tyranny threatened to engulf us and when there was no second front except our own. This was the great crucial moment of modern history. What was at stake was not some theory of government, but the whole and personal freedom of men and women and children. And the battle for them was a battle against great odds. That battle had to be won not only in the air and on the sea and in the field, but in the hearts and minds of ordinary people with a deep capacity for heroism. It was then that Winston Churchill was called by Almighty God, as our faith makes us believe, to stand as our leader and our inspirer. There were, in 1940, defeatists who felt that prudence required submission on such terms as might be had. There were others who, while not accepting the inevitability of defeat, thought that victory was impossible. Winston Churchill scorned to fall into either category, and he was right. With courage and matchless eloquence and human understanding, he inspired us and led us to victory. In the whole of recorded modern history, this was, I believe, the one occasion when one man, with one soaring imagination, with one fire burning in him, and with one unrivaled capacity for conveying it to others, won a crucial victory, not only for the forces, for there were many heroes in those days, but for the very spirit of human freedom. And so, on this great day, we thank him and we thank God for him. There are two other things I want to say to you quite quickly on a day which neither you nor I will ever willingly forget. One is that Winston Churchill was not an institution, but a man of wit and chuckling humor and penetrating understanding, not a man who spoke to us as from the mountain tops, but one who expressed the simple and enduring feelings of ordinary men and women. It was because he was a great Englishman that he was able to speak for the English people. It was because he was a great Commonwealth statesman that he was able to warm hearts and inspire courage right around the seven seas. It was because he was a great human being that in our darkest days he lit the lamps of hope at many firesides and released so many from the chains of despair. There's been nobody like him in our lifetimes. We must and do thank God for him and strive to be worthy of his example. And the second thing I'll never forget is this. Winston Churchill's wife is with us here in London, a great and gracious lady in her own right. Could I today send her your love and mine? She has suffered an irreparable personal loss, but she has proud and enduring memories, happy memories, I venture to say. We share her sorrow, but I know that she would wish us to share with her those rich remembrances which the thought of the great man evokes. There have been in the course of recorded history some men of power who have cast shadows across the world. Winston Churchill, on the contrary, was a fountain of light and of hope. Now, as I end my talk to you from the crypt of St. Paul's, with its reminders of Nelson and Wellington, those marvellous defenders of long ago, the body of Winston Churchill goes in procession through the streets of London. His London, our London, this most historic city, this ancient home of freedom, this place through which, in the very devastation and fire of war, his voice rang with courage and defiance and hope and rugged confidence. His body will be carried on the Thames, a river full of history. With one heart we all feel, with one mind we all acknowledge, that it will never have borne a more precious burden or been enriched by more splendid memories.
Sir Robert Menzies, the Prime Minister of Australia. And indeed, as he was speaking, so as you saw, the procession was going on and on. There's something terribly moving about the slow, slow pace of it all. But no one can be hurried. Everybody must go slowly. But for no reason can anything be done quickly. And you know that it'll follow this inexorable pace right until the end of its journey out in Oxfordshire in the middle of this afternoon. Once again now we're looking at the latter end of the 3/4 of a mile, at the Royal Artillery and police bands and the police contingents that follow behind, winding their way along through these streets of the city. Those who line the route and hold the ground, the Royal Air Force men, reverse their arms as the procession passes them.